All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. So, folks, we're about a little bit more than 24 hours away from either knowing that we're going to see the Connecticut Huskies win their third national championship in the last 4 years under head coach Dan Hurley, or Michigan is going to cut down the nets for the first time since 1989. And one thing that we have seen through this edition of the NCAA tournament is that Michigan has just steamrolled their opponents, and honestly, for the bulk of the season, for the matter. But I mean, you look at these results throughout this tournament: 101 to 80 in the first round against Howard, 95 to 72 in the second round against St. Louis, 90 to 77 in the Sweet 16 against Alabama. And honestly, the final score really wasn't indicative of how Michigan dominated that game. The Elite Eight, they jumped on Tennessee from the word go, and they never gave them an opportunity to breathe. And then last night, in a matchup of top five teams, not only top five teams, but two teams who people thought could have been the number one seed overall in this tournament, Michigan jumped on Arizona early, and they made a very good Arizona team. An Arizona team that there were plenty of people out there, if you told them that the Wildcats were going to win it all, they wouldn't be surprised. That's how good that Arizona is. Michigan made them look bad. Okay. And in the process, because of that, I think that there are some people out there who think that, you know what, all the Wolverines have to do is to show up and they're going to knock off UConn. And to quote the great Lee Corso, not so fast, my friends. I'll tell you like this: UConn is an underdog. They're a 6.5 point underdog as of right now going into this game. Dan Hurley thrives off of that. Dan Hurley feeds off of that because I guarantee you he has been coaching his team up about that all day long. He's going to coach them up about it all day long, heading into the contest tomorrow. Dan Hurley is one of those guys. He has no problem playing the us against the world card, and he's going to do whatever he has to do to try to motivate his team. So for Connecticut to come into this game and win, what are some of the keys? For me, I want to start in the middle, and I'm talking about the bigs. We've got Terrace Reed Jr. for Connecticut going up against Ade Mara, the 7'3" big guy out of Spain for Michigan. And will we see Reed be able to have success against uh, Mara in this contest? I mean, you look at it, and it's been the Terrace Reed show so far in this tournament for Connecticut. You look at some of the outcomes that he's had so far: 31 points, 27 rebounds in the first round against Furman. He came back with 10 points and 13 rebounds in the win over UCLA in the second round, 20 points, 5 rebounds against Michigan State in the Sweet 16, 26 points and 9 rebounds against Duke, and then 17 points and 11 rebounds against Illinois last night in the national semifinal. And honestly, for what it's worth, UConn is probably not getting ready for this game tomorrow night without what we have seen from Terrace Reed Jr. in this tournament. Now, nonetheless, Ade Mara is 7'3". Terrace Reed is not exactly a small guy. He's 6'11". He has great discipline in the post. I think he's been coached up very well by Dan Hurley in that aspect for this season. He's very patient. He knows how to use leverage. He knows how to use his weight. And he's not going to be afraid of going up against Ade Mara in this contest. Another big question mark, if you will, for Connecticut is going to be the health of Solo Ball. Of course, Ball did not practice today. He was in a walking boot, had that foot injury that he suffered last night in the win over Illinois, but nonetheless, he kept going out there. He played the whole game for the most part, and in his words, it was all about the adrenaline. I think Solo Ball is going to be ready to go for this game. I think that the Connecticut athletic trainers are going to do everything possible to have him at his best. He's not going to be 100%, but at the end of the day, this is a national championship that we're talking about. If Solo Ball had to go out there and crawl, I think he's going to go out there and play, and it's going to be important because he gives Connecticut another ball handler. He gives Connecticut another leader and floor general on the court. He gives Connecticut another athletic defender on the wings, and that's going to be important in this game for UConn. Alex Caravan, who is set to take the floor for the last time in a Connecticut uniform, win, lose, or draw in this one. Will we see him get off early in his final game at Connecticut as he's looking to be the first non UCLA player to win 3 national championships? Caravan's shot has really not been there in the last couple of games, but he made those big shots coming down the stretch against Duke in the Elite Eight, and he only hit 1 3 last night in the win over Illinois. I think, honestly, in this game, I think Alex Caravan is going to go out on his shield. He is he's a college basketball's player's college basketball player. Okay, he's one of those guys. He's a Dan Hurley guy, and I think he's going to go out there and leave it all out there. Another thing for me with UConn, Mr. Big Shot, Braylon Mullins, and of course, we've seen the youngster, come up big in this NCAA tournament. He came up big in the first half last night against Illinois, and when UConn needed a big shot late to kind of put some distance between them and the Illini, who else but Braylon Mullins? Braylon Mullins is going to have to start strong in this contest and keep it going. If you're Dan Hurley and Connecticut, you got to sit back and look at what Wisconsin, Duke, okay, and Purdue did against Michigan this season. That's important because they're the only 3 teams that have beaten the Wolverines so far this year. Wisconsin used their bigs. Purdue used their bigs to win the Big Ten title. And of course, with Cam Boozer, with Duke, that was a difference right there. That's going to be one part of it. Another thing for me, Connecticut, they're going to have to win the transition game at both ends of the floor. I think UConn, they're going to have to get up the floor before the big fella, Ade Mara, gets down the court, try to do some things there. But nonetheless, Michigan still has size besides Ade Mara. You would look at the injury that Yexel Londonborg suffered last night in the game, and it looked real bad. Okay, a lot of people, myself included, did not expect to see him come back last night unless Dusty May really needed him to. But nonetheless, look, Londonborg came back in the second half of that game, made a couple of big shots, or Lindenborg, excuse me, made some big shots in that contest, a la Willis Reed, and really got the momentum going and propelled Michigan to the big win. Now, you look at this backcourt for the Wolverines with Elliot Cadeau and Trey McKinney. They are fast and they are physical. I think that this game, I don't think a lot of people, or enough people rather, are giving Connecticut enough credit. This has basically been a top 10 team for the bulk of the season. They've got some quality wins on their resume this year, folks, which includes knocking off the likes of Illinois twice, knocking off Florida, knocking off Texas. And for Connecticut here, a win would kind of make them the de facto Big Ten champs because you think about it. They beat Illinois in the regular season, and it's been nothing but Big Ten teams that UConn has had to face. They knocked off UCLA in the second round, knocked off Michigan State in the Sweet 16, the Illini last night, and they're facing their 4th different Big Ten team in this tournament in the form of Michigan. I look at it like this. Who's going to win on the glass? Also, the Michigan front line, aside from Ade Mara. And of course, I'm talking about Morris Johnson Jr. and of course, Yaxel Lindenborg. So that's all going to be important. Like I said before, UConn has to win the transition game. I think Connecticut, they've got to go out there and they've got to knock down some shots early, not from a confidence standpoint, but to give Michigan something to think about. And the reason why is this: you've got to put Michigan in a deficit early. I'm not saying you got to go there, I'll put them down 20. No, but you have to put them in a small deficit, give them something to think about. Why? Because Michigan has not been in chase mode whatsoever throughout this tournament. They have flat out dominated. So I think this is going to be a tremendous chess match between two darn good coaches because Dan Hurley, he is looking to join an elite list of college basketball head coaches who have won at least three national championships. If Connecticut wins tomorrow night, Dan Hurley is going to join the likes of Bobby Knight, Roy Williams, Jim Calhoun, another Connecticut head coach, Adolph Rupp, Mike Krzyzewski, and John Wooden as the only college head coaches in men's basketball to win at least three national championships. On the flip side, with Michigan and Dusty May is coming, okay? And he is one guy who I really do feel can match Dan Hurley with X's and O's. He can match Dan Hurley with intensity. Maybe not, outwardly like we see from Coach Hurley, but nonetheless, Dusty May can do it. A lot on the line tomorrow night. UConn is going for their seventh national championship as a program. Of course, it would be their third in 4 years under Dan Hurley. And for Michigan, aside from looking to win their first national championship since 1989, they are also looking to become the first Big Ten program to win the national championship since Michigan State did it back in 2000. Same city that we saw the Spartans cut down the nets. Now, one thing for here to think about, maybe it's an omen. Connecticut has never lost a national championship game, but in all of their national championship games, Connecticut was always the designated home team. Thus, they wore the white jerseys. This is going to be the first time that they will be the designated road team and wear the dark jerseys. Will that be an omen? We have to wait and see. Like I said, UConn needs to start fast. UConn has to put some pressure on Michigan. And if Michigan gets ahead, will Connecticut be able to weather the storm? You think about the games that Connecticut lost twice to St. John's. It was all about the defensive pressure that the Red Storm caused Connecticut, which was a big difference in both of those contests. Losing to Arizona, Arizona did something that you normally don't see against Connecticut. They were just more athletic than the Huskies, and they cleaned up on the glass. Okay, so that's something that you have to think about, especially some people who are going to say, well, Connecticut couldn't beat Arizona, and then we just saw Michigan dominate Arizona. I'm throwing that out of there. But nonetheless, also, we saw UConn lose to Creighton, and we also saw UConn lose to Marquette during the regular season. But like I said, the Huskies are going to have to start fast. They're going to have to make some big shots. Some people want to write them off. And like I said, I am not one. I still think it's going to be a big chore for Connecticut to knock off Michigan, but not to say that it is not doable. However, with all of that said, I think Dusty May and his guys will not be denied tomorrow night. Thus, I am going to take Michigan over UConn by the score of 82-70. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And as always, if you like what you heard and saw in this podcast, you know what to do, folks. Just hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. And like I always say, it's greatly appreciated. Also, if you are on the X, formerly known as Twitter, you can check me out anytime at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you give me that follow, it will be my pleasure to do the same in return. And that also goes for Instagram, and you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. Also, if you are on Facebook, definitely be sure to check out the Sports Depot 365. And as far as I am concerned, one of the better sports groups going on social media. But until next time, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off, and I'm saying thanks once again for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.